This project's novel PDF and digital album are free. But if you want to give money for my work, and to stay in the spirit of the themes of the Metal Gear Solid series, especially with what's happening in Afghanistan right now, I invite you to make a donation to Save the Children, UNICEF, Médecins Sans Frontières, or any other INGO helping underprivileged or endangered children people around the world. Even a few euros or dollars can provide them medicine, a vaccine, a meal, or school materials, like pencil or sheets of paper. In some countries, it's still very difficult to obtain. Links are in the description below. I was born in a small town in 1990, the year after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And as I discovered history as a teenager, I developed a passion for the Cold War era. I've always seen it as the roots, the foundation, on which the world we live in today was built. After World War II, the aftermath of what happened in Berlin turned into a struggle for world power between the United States and the Soviet Union. Many wars, many deaths. And, in 1989, the end of part of history.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Reporting tonight from Berlin.
The countries and their borders have remained largely the same since, with only a few minor changes. But between 1945 and 1989, there were a lot of conspiracies, secrets, and operations that shaped the world from the shadows, while science and computing were changing society. The Metal Gear Solid series used this historical period as the backdrop to its main story in the first two games, before really exploring the Cold War in Snake Eater and the other games with Big Boss as the protagonist. And then, at the end, there was Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. Just another day in a war without end. With Ground Zeroes as a prologue that follows and bounding with Peace Walker, a new story specific to the game with Skullface as an antagonist and a secret truth to be discovered about the real identity of Venom Snake, The Phantom Pain was meant to be the last chapter of the story, connecting Peace Walker and Metal Gear. But part of it is missing, the Mission 51. There were elements created for it, but its development was cancelled even before that of the game, because the latter was already too expensive for the studio behind it, Konami.
We finally really did it. You maniacs! You blew it up! Oh, damn you! God damn you all to hell!
However, a few elements were still created during development alongside the game and shared in a documentary of its collector's edition, presenting the artworks and unfinished cutscenes of the mission. With all of this information and the others available in other games of the series, anyone can get a feel for this missing part of the story. However, the absence of the Mission 51 results in a strange feeling for anyone who has played the game, like an absence of conclusion, which leaves a feeling somewhat similar to this Phantom Pain from the game's title. I felt it too.
Have you felt it?
Today, we've been carrying it for 6 years now, and it's time to let go. To say goodbye to the game, to the series, and to look to the future. The Phantom Pain is the last big game I played, and will surely be the last. I don't have time to play video games anymore, but it's fine to me if this was the last one I played. I finished it 2.5 times, and once 100%.
What's that? Cell 5? Nice!
But there was something that always brought me back to this game, because of its missing end. I had something to find, but not in the game itself. That's why I made this project, a novelization of the Mission 51, using all leaked official content. I wrote it in the narrative style of the game, alternating phases of gameplay and cutscenes, and I stayed strictly true to the story, with the idea of giving a conclusion to the game while making sure that it connects the Phantom Pain and Metal Gear, the game's original purpose, adding a very few minor details, connecting some of their respective events spread throughout the novel. But to do that, I had to truly understand the game and the series, or it would just have been a random fanfiction of whatever I wanted to be in the game. Instead, I dove into the details and main references of the game's story and read all I could about the theories, the different interpretations, etc. to really understand the heart of Metal Gear Solid. I won't pretend I did it, but I did my best to provide you a novel that concludes the story of the game as accurately as possible. So in the first part of the book's PDF, you will find a summary of all the games with Big Boss as protagonist, including many artworks by Yoji Shinkawa, which largely contribute to the identity of the series, as well as a special part about the story of the boss, and summaries and analysis of the main references of the Phantom Pain's story. Moby Dick, Lord of the Flies, Kagemusha, Pontypool, Godzilla, and even the story of Sako and Vanzetti. Obviously, in this analysis, I made several comparisons with the Phantom Pain or the Metal Gear Solid series. And you will find plenty of footnotes there so as not to miss any detail, and all the terms related to the gameplay are explained there as well. For information, I used the PlayStation 4 controls for this book. Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain is a particular episode because the player plays as Venom Snake, who is a body double of the real Big Boss. Ocelot used hypnotherapy to make him think he is Big Boss and act like the latter, but also plastic surgery to give him the face of the legendary soldier. All of this while he was still in a coma in the hospital after the helicopter crash at the end of Ground Zeroes. The player gets this revelation at the end of the game, in the last story mission, and after doing a lot of choices and actions. And thinking he was playing as Big Boss, he suddenly takes responsibility for everything he had done until then, thinking he was Big Boss like the character of Venom Snake. Hideo Kojima did that because he knew that each player had a different idea of the character of Big Boss at the time the game took place, and that he couldn't satisfy everyone with a unique, definitive version of the character. Sometimes it's a really bad idea. So he preferred to create the character of Venom Snake, a double that protects Big Boss, a concept inspired by the movie Kagemusha. To let the player build his own vision of the legend of the Big Boss in the mid-80s. The player then becomes co-writer. He builds his mother base, his army, and decides whether or not to possess nuclear weapons. He will also be able to take revenge on Skullface, who is as much the enemy of Big Boss as of Venom Snake, because the latter was the combat medic who protected Big Boss from the explosion of the bomb of Paz in the helicopter. And the boss wanted to avenge her, as well as Chico. However, despite the player playing a character who's not Big Boss, the story of Venom Snake is built over the course of the game, with D-Dog, Quiet, the revenge on Skullface that he accomplishes, etc. And although this victory is altered by the revelation about the identity of Venom Snake, the player still had the opportunity to hunt a villain, to take revenge in the rules of the art, as much for Venom Snake as for Big Boss and the Ground Zeroes incident, and get a satisfying victory after a duel against a Metal Gear. And in the second part of the game following this victory, ending with the revelation of the identity of Venom Snake, the story of the game is released from this Manichaean side to explore the consequences of this long revenge punctuated by armed clashes. As the winner, the player can now build or dismantle nuclear weapons, making him the leader of a private armed force, potentially equipped with nukes. Miller, for his part, sinks into paranoia despite revenge, which ultimately brought him nothing positive, and the player gradually loses everything he obtained in the first part: Quiet, Huey, the Sahelanthropus, Eli, the child soldiers, and even several of his men, whom he has to bring down himself due to an outbreak caused by Huey on the Mother Base quarantine platform, in an emotionally trying mission for the player.
Boss! Boss! Hey! Let's let the boss decide. We live and die by your order, boss. Boss!
Staff member has died.
I won't scatter your sorrow to the heartless sea. I will always be with you. Plant your roots in me. See you end as ashes. You're all diamonds.
If the revenge of the first part was 100% linked to Big Boss's story, the second one is really tied to Venom Snake, and had to end with him learning who he really was and accepting his place anyway, because in the end, he had accomplished the ultimate mission as a protector of his mentor, Big Boss. The Mission 51 was meant to wrap up the subplots of his story and would have focused on Eli's relationship with Big Boss, the source of hatred at the root of his action in the following games.
I'm not me. I'm just a copy of you. I will surpass my father. Destroy my father. Destroy you! I'll kill all of Cypher. I'll destroy your precious world.
The system is mine. Your guns and your weapons are no longer your own. Behold, guns of the Patriots.
And that also had to end Skullface's story for good, because even dead, his plan could still be accomplished if the world found out about the Sahelanthropus, because of Eli. Here's the plot, if you don't already know it. in the cutscene following the mission 41, Proxy War Without End, Eli escapes from Mother Base with the Diamond Dogs helicopter, with on board the pilot he captured, 2 groups of child soldiers, and Tretij Rebenok, who stole and took away the Sahelanthropus with his psychokinetic powers. Normally, at the start of the mission 51, Miller was to tell Venom Snake that the pilot had been found tied up in a forest to a seat of the helicopter, which crashed near the African coast. For their part, Eli and the children would have taken up a position on an isolated island a few tens of miles from the crash site, surrounded by salt water, and which would therefore have prevented the spread of the parasite because the salt has a destructive effect on it.
Refreshing? Salt water.
No! You'll die!
This life isn't yours to take. Enough. That's enough.
Upon their arrival, Eli would have spread the 3rd English strain that Tretij Rebenok gave him on the island and would have killed all the adults there. Some inhabitants of neighboring villages would have quickly started to talk about the Sahelanthropus they saw in the air, and following these early testimonies, a race against time would have started between the XOF and the Diamond Dogs to recover the Metal Gear first. The XOF would have arrived just before Venom Snake, who would have found Eli at the same time as them. Then, an epic final battle would obviously have taken place between the Sahelanthropus and the 2 armed forces, leading to a defeat of Eli and the conclusion of the game. Based on this official information, I first began to work on the mission map and search for a reference location. I like to write stories based on real elements and places when possible, to gather more detailed and concrete information to use and play with, and I quickly found the Lake Natron Basin. It's not that far from both the African East Coast and the Seychelles, where Mother Base is located. The peculiar Lake Natron red alkaline salt water at 60 degrees is dangerous and can melt many organic matters, and I found that this red color matched the game's violence and main theme of revenge. This color comes from a pigment from an algae present in the water, which also gives its color to the plumage of the flamingos that breed here. But this area being very large, I downscaled it and modified some elements to create the map of the mission. I also kept the original overall shape, but divided it in 2, horizontally, with the lower part, whose water, red and deep, leads to a very long, intermediate salt island leading to the northern part, where the bluish and cooler salt water is similar to the one we can see on the artworks of the mission. This water, where a human being can walk, surrounds another smaller island where Eli hides and gives access to its southern beach. The north is delimited by a rocky enclosure overlooking the northern end of the lake, stopping at the cliffs of the relief delimiting the basin. Of course, a parachute drop would allow Snake to land directly on the North Island, but he would be immediately spotted by Eli, so to keep the advantage of surprise, he would be here dropped to the south of the map by chopper at the start of the mission, and would have to do the walk to the island to find Eli. I pictured this novel as a DLC, so you will find a lot of details about gameplay elements, some new, how to unlock events or items, and I added some double pages with a black background and fonts from the game to enhance reading immersion. Many elements evoked in the text are illustrated by an image, either placed directly on the page or accessible via a link leading to an image gallery annex. To return to the page you were reading, you just have to click on the image you came to see. There are also many other links of tapes that the player could find on the mission map, as well as some background musics that I made for the project. The full soundtrack is available on my YouTube channel, my Bandcamp page, and you will find a playlist containing all of the individual videos for each track of it on the channel. I also did a few pages to explain the mechanism of certain weapons, like Napalm B or the Little Boy and Fat Man atomic bombs. There are also a few pages about some events or historical details. Finally, I added a user manual and a glossary in the first pages of the book, even before the summary. Read them carefully to then read the PDF of the book the right way. Of course, to write this novel, I had to make a few personal choices sometimes, and you might disagree with some points of the story. Objection! Because even after a long study of the one of the game, its themes and references, I had to make some minor adjustments about certain characters and locations to make the novel fit well with the overall story of the game and series. This point reminds me the quote from Nietzsche at the start of the game. There are no facts, only interpretations. So here is mine of the game, after a long study of it, and my vision of this mission. The Mission 51 is one of those unfinished art projects whose aura lets you imagine your own version. And somehow, it's ultimately unnecessary to understand the hidden message of the game. But to do so, you had to invest yourself personally and investigate for a while to find it. So I wrote this novel, first because I wanted to, in a totally selfish way, and because with this more explicit and detailed ending, players who didn't like the game after completing it or didn't want to scratch under the surface, maybe here can find out what's underneath, and why not give the game a second chance. If you're one of those disappointed players, or want to learn more about the Phantom Pain, I recommend the very detailed analysis video of Michael Saba. Metal Gear Solid 5 is a misunderstood anti-war masterpiece. And as a bonus, to finish this video, if you liked the 80s setting of the Phantom Pain, I recommend strongly the TV series The Americans. It's a regular spy story set in the 1980s with two undercover Soviet agents living in America with their two kids.
Do you know where your father is?
Oh, he's upstairs.
Well, do we have visitors already?
Yeah, this is Stan.
Hey,
Phil Jennings.
how you doing, Stan Beeman?
My wife, Elizabeth Page Henry.
Hi.
Hi. Hey, Henry.
Hello.
Ooh, are those brownies?
Homemade.
Matt? Your mom's a good cook?
Yes.
Okay.
The work on the historical reconstitution is meticulous, and the story and characters are very well written. And for the sci-fi weird stuff side of the Metal Gear Solid series, I recommend Neil Blomkamp's Firebase short, which is set during the Vietnam War. The plot: a soldier armed with a ray gun is then sent to do battle with a Viet Cong who has become an invincible skeleton meat man endowed with telekinetic powers. You can find The Americans on Disney Plus and Firebase for free on YouTube. And don't hesitate to watch Raka and Zygote too. Very good sci-fi horror stuff. One final recommendation: Shingeki no Kyojin, Attack on Titan. As a soldier, The internal conflict of the character of Rainer Braun is particularly interesting, and the story contains a reflection on the war quite similar to that of Pain in Naruto. Finally, in Season 4, the World War I-like trench warfare battlefield sequence has Metal Gear Solid vibes, with the cart Titan equipped with armor and weapons that make it look like a mecha. Well, to conclude, I wish you a good reading. And this is the first time I ask people who watch a video that I made to do so, but feel free to like and share it, so that people who might be interested in the project know that it exists. Thank you. It was a hell of a ride, boss.